Welcome! I'm John Denor, and this is Goblin Points. This time, I'm talking to Tamwin. If you've hung out in the Draw Steel channels on Discord, you've probably seen his name a lot of times. I ask him about knowing the rules, seemingly by heart, reverse engineering the kit math, and his experience running tactical test scenarios. Welcome to Goblin Points, Tamwin.
Hi.
Tell us a bit about yourself. How did you end up in the MCDM community, and what made you stick around?
Well, I first found Matt Colville about 2 years ago at this point when I was
Hmm.
embarking on launching what would end up being a 30, 40 player West Marches adventure, specifically in the custom fan made Hollow Knight RPG system. Um, and I was looking up resources on how to run West Marches properly. And I stumbled across Matt Colville on YouTube. I thought he had some very
Hmm.
good insights. And then I started, consuming some of his content intermittently. I haven't played 5e in a while. I kind of fallen out of that system for various reasons. I'm sure many people are familiar with. But then for me personally, I find game design to be a bit of a passion, and specifically elegant design, where the mechanics do a good job of capturing the emotion, the vibe, incentivizing the player to play in a way that feels fun and it feels good with the
Hmm.
character. And so the early design in the game videos I was really excited about. And then once the backer kit dropped and we were getting actual packets, I've been all over Draw Steel since.
I wanted to ask you about the the 5T thing, the
Ah,
Tamwin's torturous tests of tactical trials.
yes. Um, so that started because I'll be honest, I was looking at the adventure, and while I thought the adventure was very real, wherein there's a lot of like storylines and kind of weaving your way through the fall of the city, the maps didn't really inspire me. I thought there's a lot
Hmm.
more potential in the system for having interesting and unique dynamic terrain, things going on, and I figured why not try some myself? So I drew up some maps, which are basically just boxes. Don't have artistic talent in that sense, and decided to run a quick little adventure of some people running through it, and
Hmm.
also trying out various tactical objectives rather than just the kill all enemies, because I thought that was also something that they recommend in the section of the book, and I'd messed around with it a little, but I figured I'd really dive into it and see how it played out,
Hmm.
and I was blown away by how much of an improvement it made.
I was in the one test where we did there was a tower and there was a flag on the top of the tower,
Mhm.
which the bad guys were trying to get. It was really a great contrast to the adventure, which splits the party all over the map. Basically, it encourages you almost to split the party into separate rooms. But playing on the just the tower map, where we all were kind of stuck together and really had the opportunity to kind of work so much better together, was, to me, at least for me, it was a lot of fun.
Mhm. Yeah, I've definitely felt that interesting maps and objectives. Like, okay, even in the most boring draw steel game of like you're in a white room, here's 10 of the same goblin enemy, I still find that more
Mm.
fun than most other I say most other D&D. I find it more fun than D&D. Uh, but it's got such a high ceiling in terms of if you actually do play into its strengths and create interesting
Mm.
maps, create objectives. And I think that's very apparent in situations where even when there were only a handful of war dogs left, you all they needed was for one of them to be able to get to that flag. And so even though
Mm.
there wasn't any question about who was winning the fight from the like damage health standpoint, you still needed to be thinking tactically, you still needed to be playing around your opponent. And that
Yeah.
matters a ton, and it makes it so that even as fights draw to their conclusion, you still have drama, tension, excitement.
What really stood out to me was there's been some discussions in both the Reddit and the Discord about what about Flea Mortals and Where Evil Lives. I know Matt mentioned at some point that Where Evil Lives would basically need to be redesigned with new maps to account for the all the extra movement or the added movement that Raw Steel kind of encourages. More than the adventure, at least the Fall of Black Bottom adventure, more than that, your tower map really showed me why that is the case. Just the added verticality, just being able to kind of use the environment in such in you had those spike walls which we could send enemies into,
Mhm.
and we didn't use them that much, but it changed the character of the fight so much for me, at least, especially in contrast to D&D combat, which
Mhm. Yeah.
which is basically where I'm getting my fix today.
Yeah, no, I definitely think things like that make a huge difference. I ran, most 5Ts. I've sort of tried to do something a little different, experiment, see what
Mm.
works. So, for example, there was, another one I ran, which was basically set in a crowded marketplace where a demon portal suddenly opens. This was
Oh.
back when demons gained villain points from killing people, and so there were 20
Oh.
civilians on this map and a bunch of demons which were going out, and anytime one of those civilians died, I had more villain points to spawn in more demons. And so the party had to basically fight through the horde of demons to get to the portal and close it. And so, like,
Wow.
for example, in that map, I had market stalls, which were a little like 3x2 spot that was difficult terrain to try to like move through. But if you were inside of it,
Mm.
you had cover because it's a market stall. And if anyone was
Mhm.
ever force moved into the market stall, it would collapse on top of them and inflict the restrained condition until the end of their turn. You could also like jump down on top of them, and it would break your fall, so you take less fall damage.
Wow.
Yeah, stuff like that. I'm actually planning on making packs of these dynamic terrain objects. I
Yeah.
have an acronym somewhere. Let me hang on. Let me look up my notes this time. I'm thinking I'm probably going to call this 3T for Tamwin's Tactical Terrain.
Very good. Very
Yeah,
good.
I'm thinking that like because I've got 5T, which is like my little like danger room combat scenarios. I have 3T, which is going to
Mm.
be the terrain objects. I'm going to see if I can manage to get a 4T for like my homebrew stuff. And just the different levels of T's are just, if you see a number and then a T, it's something I've made.
Nice. You need to think about branding.
Yeah, well, no, it's all about branding. I plan on making basically packs of various dynamic terrain objects that you can just plop down on a map, and they have the
Mm.
rules interactions built in. So, like for example, furniture that it's difficult terrain to move over, but you can throw it like an object with like force movement into enemies to deal damage.
Ah, yes.
Tables that, like for a maneuver, you can flip them over to create a spot of cover. So basically, if you're having a encounter in a bar fight, everything around you is something you can interact with, use, manipulate.
Oh my god. I love this.
Yeah, no, like it's and so both making packs of these objects so that someone who's building their own map can just kind of plunk them down and have it work,
Yeah.
but then also making interesting and unique, sort of relatively generic maps. Here's a cart going down a road, right? Plenty of times when that's the source of an encounter, but the cart has like a trait such that if you force move the cart, it transfers all that force movement to the cart, and it will roll and hit someone and then deal the damage there. Trees which have like branches like higher elevations that you can jump or teleport or climb up there to then have high
Ah,
ground.
yeah.
Bushes that provide various levels of concealment, patches of mud for difficult terrain, just really make the map as interesting as possible so that the fights there then become as interesting as possible.
As a person who's not very creatively inclined, this is great stuff. Just like a big box of objects that I can plonk onto like on my map just to make it more interesting. Sounds that's right up my alley.
Yeah. No, I've had several people in the Discord say that they would be very interested in that.
Yeah.
As soon as the codex comes out, I will be a busy bee.
Kind of parallel to the 5T testing scenarios. It seems like you're playing the game quite frequently. I know you mentioned in the Discord at some point that you played like 3 or 4 times a week, at least that week, or
It was 6. I played 6 times that week. I am lucky enough to have enough free time that I can play a whole lot of Draw Steel. I'm in 2 regular
wow. Okay.
campaigns. I was in 2 playtests. Then I had one of the regular campaigns at the last week had gotten delayed, and they decided to reschedule it. So
Ah. Okay.
there was sort of an extra session from that, and then I was also running one of my 5Ts.
Wow. I mention it because I've been impressed multiple times in the conversations on the Discord where it seems like, to me at least, you know the rules backwards and forwards,
Um,
and know almost every rule on the top of your head.
yeah. So it's a combination of having played the game a lot, being very familiar with the
Mm.
rules, and knowing how to command F things in the rules document, basically. If I realize there's some rule I want to check, like I just basically just tab over, find it, and refresh myself. So it's not always that I know
Mm.
the rules off the top of my head. There are a lot of them I do. But like for example, I hadn't realized until the other day that they had changed Furies and Conduits in the backer packet as opposed to the Patreon packet. They get their resource at the start of their turn now, not the start of the round,
Ah, right.
because that was something that slipped through version control, wasn't on the change document.
Kind of related to that, how do you keep all the versions of the rules separate in I
Um,
mean, how do you keep track of which rules are relevant or current or not, basically?
Mostly by because I'm playing the game so actively. When a
Mm.
rule changes, like, sure, the first time I might be a little confused or I might forget, but then I'm playing with a new rule, and the old rule doesn't matter anymore.
Okay, yeah.
I'm I always like mental plasticity. I'm very adaptable in terms of changing how I play, in terms of working with new rules. That's never really been an issue for me in the way that it seems to be for a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah, because I've played a few in a few tests late last year while it was still D6s and no power roll. And just between those and the playtest packets we've gotten this summer, I get confused. And those are like a half a year apart. So I'm just so impressed with you suddenly like, no, this has changed recently, or yeah, that's different now. And how do you remember all this, and how do you notice?
Um, well, I mean, I have a horrible memory for a lot of other things, but the things I'm passionate about, I tend to glom onto.
I had a lot of fun. I was basically just ghosting at that point, but I was having a lot of fun with especially the patron packet rules for how area abilities work around corners and
Mm.
all the different diagrams.
Ah, yes, the birth of the diagram spam. Um,
I remember it was just multiple screens of diagrams
mhm.
from different people trying to understand how does it work around the corner.
Well, I think the kind of the worst part about it is
Mm,
we made a lot of diagrams trying to figure out how corners work, because we had the line of effect rules, and there were
mm,
stipulations about it not spreading around the corner, and like what does that mean, in terms of like, because there's also where it doesn't squares don't necessarily need line of effect to you. There's the concept of like the
mm,
origin square that you're casting the area from. We went back and forth. We shared a lot of diagrams and kind of came to a consensus like, okay, this feels like a good, solid representation of, how area abilities work. And then
mm.
James Intercazzo came in and went, oh, no, 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 that's entirely wrong. Here's um, where basically, instead of using the line of effect rules, it basically uses like area abilities don't travel diagonally, I think is the best way of encapsulating it.
Oh yeah. When I saw James's diagram.
Mhm.
I think I think I understood what he was trying to communicate in the rules, but I did not understand it until he like drew it out on a diagram.
Yeah.
And I played with a few of my regular D&D group, and one of them was using an area of effect or an area ability. And they were asking about, yeah, if I place it here, will I be able to hit the people inside of this room, even though it's kind of outside, but the door is open? And all I could say is, well, I understand how this rule works, so no, or rather, the rules in the packet are very confusing. But I've seen a diagram from the designer, and I think I understand how it works. So the answer is no. But I can't explain to you in a very good way why.
Mhm. Yeah. It's basically if there's a doorway or a gap, the area has to be perfectly in front and it only moves straight through. It doesn't spread out at all
Yeah,
on the other side.
that was incredibly difficult for my my brain to.
Well, have you considered posting 10 to 20 diagrams as a means of clarifying?
As I saw your diagrams, and I thought, well, this kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, then James comes in with his, and no.
Yeah. Back to square one.
But it also made me go, okay, I see what you're saying. I see what you tried to explain in the rules now.
Mhm.
I see where that text came from you, what mental image that was kind of spawned from.
Yeah. I mean, it's a classic issue of just describing things with words, often
Mm,
can be confused. Traditional elven greetings as a prime example.
yeah. I didn't realize, and I don't know how many people actually did, but I didn't realize at all because I watched the I may have watched the VOD of that stream of Dusk when the traditional Elven greeting was created, and because I remember so distinctly Anna reacting to Matt's gestures and kind of stuff, and him saying later she couldn't see me, and it was just a coincidence, and I'm like, how? But it seemed so. I mean, how was it not scripted then? It's just too perfect.
Yeah. I have actually not seen any of Dusk yet.
Oh, you haven't?
No. Like, it's kind of funny. I've seen all of the capital world building streams because like that's my idea of
Ah.
fun. But especially with Dusk being a good like snapshot into Orden, and also like Matt talking about
Mm.
potentially continuing it, I think it would be good to go back and see the original.
I think this is kind of plays to your interest in game design, but I was really impressed with your work reverse engineering the kit
Ah,
or like the math behind
mhm,
the kits.
yeah.
How did that come about, and how do you do that even?
Well, I mean, I have a very good head for numbers and systems, so I basically just like
Uh-huh.
looked at that spreadsheet that has with all the kits and their numbers, and I went, okay, yeah, so 3 stamina is a point, 1 speed is a point, 1 FMR is a point, reach is 2 points. Yeah, that seems like and then I feed and look at the kits and I compare the system that I made to that, and it all checks out, except for the Panther and Pugilist, but admittedly, at the time when I first reverse engineered the math, they did have the same points as everyone else.
Oh.
Um,
I see those combinations, and all I can think is how many combinations there might be. My brain is just thinking, okay, how do you go through all those iterations and try to figure out how which one ends up in the right? But it seems when you did it, it was basically just like, I can see the pattern here.
mhm. Yeah, no, as a very, logical, rational individual, I have a huge respect for gut intuition of just about, yeah, that feels right. Um,
It's something that I'm trying to learn to appreciate more,
mhm.
especially with the design of Draw Steel, where just the thing with I think it's in one of the designing the game videos where Matt talks about just rolling two dice feels better than rolling one die.
You get a lot more clickety clack when you've got the clickety
Yeah,
clack roll.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's just like one of the drops that makes me go, yeah, I kind of see what you're saying. So there is this kind of unmeasurable thing
Mhm.
here that it just feels right, and I've come to appreciate that more lately because I've been programming for 10 plus years. So in my brain, everything needs to be like you need to be able to trace it back to a certain like scalar value. And
Well, I think, like, I mean, the common saying "trust but verify" comes up. Like, if you have a gut feeling
Mm,
about something, it's probably for a reason. Trust it, but then also be
mm,
like, you know, I feel like there's something wrong in this code. Dig into it. Like, try to find the root cause. What small detail your subconscious pinged on that like alerted you to something
mm,
was on. So, like, for example, like when after I like thought I had the system, I went through and I plugged it into every kit to make sure that it
mm,
lines up. So I do think it's good to verify it, try to understand the underlying causes, what's going on. Like a lot of the time, I'm very active in the homebrew section of the Discord, and
mm,
someone
mm.
will post an ability. My gut feeling will be like, that feels weak, that feels strong, and then I'll like basically like, okay. So then I go and I look at comparable abilities and I find the damage spreads and I find the effects and then I like basically just like kind of post them in as like a bunch of comparisons and lay them out next to the ability that this person came up with as a way of like saying like, okay, this feels weak. Here are some comparisons. You should add X, Y, or Z, and that
Mm.
would help bring it up.
That would be my first, like, when you got that gut instinct, how do you kind of support that with some actual something that can convince other
Mhm.
people other than just trust me, bro.
Yeah. No, I definitely think that's one of the like I'm not sure I'd go as far as well like a tenant I live life by, but it doesn't matter how good your idea is if you can't explain it to somebody else.
Yeah, that's very good. Yeah.
Because I mean, like the shoot, I forget. I literally looked this quote up like 2 days ago, and I've already forgotten who said it. Was it Isaac Newton? If I see fire, it's because I stand on the shoulders of giants.
Right. Yeah.
Communicating by allowing that idea to spread. That's what really elevates the human race as a whole and is the reason for modern progress in technology and the reason we can be talking to each other across the internet despite living however many thousands of miles away and across an
Yeah.
ocean. I don't know.
Do you have any recommendations of any kind that you want other people to kind of either discover or just
Okay, well,
check out?
uh, I read a lot of books, so
Mm.
I'm gonna give out some book recommendations. A
Shoot.
Practical Guide to Evil is my favorite book series of all time. It is a web serial. You can read it for free online. It's sort of Terry Pratchett in the sense that stories have in-universe power, and characters
Mm.
recognize that and try to play to that and get the narrative in their favor. It also has an interesting vibe of kind of because like for Draw Steel, sort of the two main touch points that like a lot of the popular media inspiration comes from is,
Mm.
fantasy stuff and superhero stuff.
Mm. Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
and that's kind of the way I describe A Practical Guide to Evil too, in a very interesting way because there are the word they use are names. You might be, the Black Knight, the Good King. Basically, the more you embody the role that your name represents, the more power it
Mm.
gives you.
Interesting.
But of course, the closer you hew to the role, the more predictable you are, the more trapped you are in the grooves of the story.
Ha ha ha.
Yeah, no, it's very fascinating, and there's a lot of very interesting characters. And the starting point of the story is the evil empire just fully defeated and conquered the good kingdom, which is of course
Mm.
not how the story is supposed to go.
Right. Yeah.
And the book takes place 20 years later in an occupied land. It starts out as like a fairly typical, young adult, pretty light reading, very good, but still that sort of like
Mm.
genre. But it just keeps building and progressing, and every book is better than the last, and it
Ah,
handles the like power scaling and growth of the scale of the story in a very clean way. Yeah, I
I'm
recommend
definitely
it for
gonna
a
read
reason.
this.
It's very good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is so what I. This is right up my alley.
Mhm.
You've started making some homebrew stuff.
Yeah.
I noticed.
Uh,
Can you talk a bit about the homebrews you've made and also where people can find it, if there's any easy way to locate it on the...
Well, so in terms of homebrew I have a set of three and a half subclasses. For the
Hmm.
shadow, I have the College of the Rat, because the classic saying druids make the best rogues, because they just turn into a spider or a fly or something and you'll fly into the enemy
Ah,
base. I figured, why do they get to have all the fun? We gave the Fury a wild shape. Why can't the shadow have a wild shape?
fair enough.
And so basically, the College of the Rat is about embodying a rat both in the physical and the metaphorical sense. Um, then I also have the College of Assassins. That might get a name change. We'll think about it. Which is
Hmm.
very based off of like the Hitman game series, and
Ah.
it's based around the sort of the core ability is garrote, which lets you grab people with your agility, and while you're have someone grabbed, they can't make noise, and you can hide with them. So you can just abduct someone off a battlefield into like a closet and have a little one-on-one, beat them up, and then come back out for a new victim.
Oh, great.
Yeah, no, it's like I said, yeah, I thought it was a very fun idea, so I made a subclass about it. I also have the bodyguard tactician, where they place their mark on their allies instead of on the enemy, and
Hmm.
you're more protected if you have a mark. They have a get down ability they can use, which is sort of like parry, except they become the target of any remaining damage. And then finally, for the conduit, I have a domain of wealth, which has some more interesting abilities coming at higher levels. But at the first, it's just the prayer effect, which is some edges and banes you can distribute. It's like the sort of ribbon ability it gets an
Hmm.
inspect, where it can look at an item and determine what are its magical properties, what value does it have. And if you do that to a
Hmm.
craftable item, you can basically reverse engineer the recipe to then research.
Ooh,
Yeah.
interesting.
But yeah, so those are the subclasses I already have. Um, you can find them in the homebrew section of the Draw Skill Discord. If you just look up Tamwin, they'll pop up.
Hmm.
I believe I will also be posting them onto the Reddit. They should be up there by the time this podcast goes live. In terms of other things, I've got several classes or several kits I have in the works that I'm planning on uploading very soon. I do have some classes; those are likely going to wait a little longer, need to iterate a bit more. I'm also working on some adventures set in the Embergrave setting, which,
Okay.
yeah, when you see that, if you enjoy being in the world that is the corpse of a dead god and digging through sort of post-apocalyptic Mad Max sand wastes, except the sand is the magic of the dead god, and there are 7 ages buried underneath it that you're finding things from. We'll keep an eye out. That'll show up at some point.
Interesting. I'm not familiar with the
Oh, well, it's so I'm working with someone, it's their personal setting, basically.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, if you had heard of it, you probably know the dude.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much for joining me on Goblin Points. It was really fun having you.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Great. Have a nice day.
Alright.
Thank you so much, Tamwin, for coming on. Links to A Practical Guide to Evil and Tamwin's Homebrew is linked in the show notes. If you want to be featured on Goblin Points or know of someone who should be, leave a comment on YouTube or Spotify or send me an email on tips@goblinpoints.com. Links to the MCDM Discord server, the Reddits for MCDM and Draw Steel, the YouTube channels of Matt and MCDM, the complete link section, and this script is in the show notes. It's also on goblinpoints.com. Next episode is on the 5th. That's the roundup for the month of September, which includes an insane amount of homebrew for Draw Steel. See you next time. Snackis.